Okay, sir. So let's start the panel discussion. And good afternoon to one and all. I, Dr. Swati Agarwal, on behalf of Jaipurian Institute of Management, extends a warm welcome to esteemed academic leaders today with us, my colleagues and students, those who have joined for the panel discussion on a very relevant and contemporary theme today, implementation of National Education Policy 2020. This outlines the vision of India's new education system. I quote, India-centric education system that contributes directly to transforming our nation into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high-quality education to all, unquote. What I understand reading and deliberating with different platforms about new education policy, this policy is a comprehensive framework from elementary education to higher education. And the beauty is it outlines for vocational training in India also, both rural and urban areas. We have with us today on the virtual dais who's whom from academic fraternity. Few of the panelists to join soon, but let's name them first. In the inaugural session, we have with us Shri Shivas Chapuria ji, keynote speaker Dr. Devi Singh ji, chief guest Dr. K.K. Agarwal, and who will share their valuable insights. Going further, we will have a panel discussion with Dr. Sunil Rai, Dr. Prabhu Agarwal, who has already joined, Dr. D.P. Goyal, Dr. Debashish Sanyal. They all will deliberate on new education policy for a session moderated by Dr. D.N. Pandey. I'm so very much confident that the session and the discussion as it unfolds, we all will have takeaway for us. The audience, those who have joined our faculty, staff, and some of the students. Going forward, may I now request Shivas Japuria ji, our Vice Chairman, Jaipurian Institute of Management, and also Saint MR Japuria Schools, to please kindly deliver welcome address. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. Dr. K.K. Agarwal ji, Chairman, National Board of Accreditation. Dr. Devi Singh, Distinguished Academic and Keynote Speaker. Distinguished panel members, Dr. D.P. Goyal, Dr. Sunil Rai, Dr. Prabhu Agarwal, Dr. Debashish Sanyal, and Dr. D.N. Pandey, faculty and students. The NEP, the National Education Policy 2020, as approved by the Union Cabinet on 29 July 2020, which replaced the previous national education policy, as you know, of 1986, has unshackled many conventional barriers and called for transforming both the intent as well as the content of the Indian education system. Education is not just about delivering content and conducting examinations and distributing degrees. It must transcend beyond this and allow the seekers of education to transform their lives and the lives of others. As the window of opportunity called demographic dividend is gradually expanding in India, India is well poised to take advantage of the new education policy 2020 and build the best of its human capital, which should make it capable of rising to global standards, which should be skillful and resilient enough to cope with the challenges of a highly complex and uncertain world that we have seen, especially this year and the last year in 2020. I believe that the policy has taken several bold steps towards providing autonomy as well as accountability to the educational ecosystem. It has taken an explicitly expansionary role. I think this is very important because previously policies in India were restrictive in nature. The idea of regulators was always to restrict the private sector. But now I think there is a complete change in the way that private institutions and government institutions are looked at. So it has taken a role which is expansionary in nature and targeted a gross enrollment ratio of 100% from preschool to secondary education by 2030. Though in the past few decades we have achieved a universal enrollment at the primary level, the gross enrollment ratio sharply drops to 79% in grade 9 and 10 and drops further to 56%. The policy also explicitly targets expanding the gross enrollment ratio at higher levels, which is currently quite low. It's in sort of close to 20%, whereas in sort of the more developed Western countries, it's 30 to 40%. And this can be achieved through a mix of private as well as public investment in education. I believe that the role of this policy is inherently different in its conception of education regulation, one that goes from restrictive to supportive of private institutions. It generally looks at private institutions as partners to work together towards the achievement of a joint goal. So no longer is there a policy which looks at that the government has to achieve its goals. Rather, the government sector and the private sector have to work together towards achieving national goals. They're not government goals anymore, but national goals that all of us have to work together towards. Uh, on the front of accountability and improving quality, several steps have been taken to give freedom to quality institutions and allow them to expand their horizons, also address the needs of the future. There is a push to allow single specialization institutions. I believe Jaipuria currently is also a single specialization institution being focused on management to become multidisciplinary in nature. This will not only create more capacity by allowing quality institutions to enter new streams, but it will create more multidisciplinary institutions, which will lead to the more holistic development of students and allow them to succeed in a more interconnected world. We are seeing more and more that the traditional jobs which were clearly defined into one category, whether it is management or arts or literature or economics, are no longer there. Business requires us to respond to various challenges and opportunities that spread across various fields. The COVID pandemic has shown that everything can get affected by something, whether it is economics, whether it is health, whether it is livelihoods. So it's more important that our students understand, have a multidisciplinary approach to their education. The traditional boundaries of science, commerce, arts, and humanities are becoming more and more irrelevant. The jobs of the 21st century will require students to make connection and transcend disciplinary boundaries. I believe that the second and perhaps the most important change towards providing greater autonomy to quality private colleges is the introduction of the concept of autonomous degree granting colleges. I believe this is extremely important. Through this, the NEP has ended the monopoly right of granting degrees, which currently was held only by universities. The Indian education system is dominated by the concept of affiliated colleges that award degrees through a university that they are affiliated with. The lack of freedom to set their own assessment, own examination, own curriculum does not allow them to keep pace with the kind of innovation that is required in the changing world. Currently, there are more than 40,000 affiliated colleges in India. And I hope that most of these colleges will be able to make the transition to an autonomous degree granting college in the very near future. There are similarly, there are close to 300 PGDM institutions, including four run by us, which occupy amongst the highest ranks of rankings amongst private B schools. And currently, we are offering diplomas rather than degrees, which of course are then given equivalence by AIU. So I think the idea of being colleges being able to award degrees directly would also allow PGDM colleges to offer MBA degrees, which would bring us at par with global practices and global institutions, and it would also allow us to offer newer age courses and multiplicity courses to the institutions. I believe that accreditation is going to play a key role in paving the way for the effective implementation of NEP by giving an assurance to students that the institutions that they are joining are of a certain quality. I'm extremely happy that we have Dr. KK Agarwal with us. Today, the credibility that NBA has established for itself, and not only for itself, but for its accredited institutions, because through the credibility of NBA, NBA accredited institutions also get credibility in the past few years, has really been unprecedented in India, and it's really commendable. At Jaipuria, we're extremely happy to be working, and playing our small part of turning the government's and the national vision into a reality. As an academic institution, it's important that we work closely with other academic institutions and invest towards achieving national goals. High quality human capital is extremely important to maintain and increase the competitiveness of the Indian business and Indian economy in the global world order. So I'm extremely happy that the national education policy has taken up this challenge of transitioning India's ecosystem 180 degrees, and I'm sure that we would like to play our small part in it towards achieving these goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Shivashji, for highlighting the inclusive approach of NEP 2020. I now invite Dr. Devi Singh Ji, Distinguished Professor with Jaipurian Institute of Management, formerly Vice Chancellor, Flame University, Pune, and former Director of Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and MTI, Gurgaon, to please share keynote address.
Well, thank you, Swati. Dr. K.K. Agarwal ji, Chairman NBA, Srivas Jaipuria ji, Dr. Pandey, all the other distinguished panelists, Dr. D.P. Goyal, Devarshi Sanyal, Dr. Rai, Dr. Prabhu Agarwal, and everyone else joining this meeting. Srivas ji has set the tone beautifully, has highlighted all the salient features and what the new education policy aims to achieve. I have read it carefully, and I can say it's a very well-written document. It's comprehensive, it's aspirational. It talks about preparing youth for future, and it's inclusive, innovative, comprehensive. All those, terms have been used, and rightly so. And also talks from earlier education to right up to higher education as beautifully defined. Unless you invest time and effort and resources early years of education, in early childhood education, not be able to build this solid foundation. So it talks about 10 bagless days in a year, mother tongue, and all of that. And in the end, talks about taking the GR to 50%, which is, as Srivas says, quite low right now. And all courses, and the flexibility of choosing your courses, and the same thing applies for the higher education. All courses, programs need to be multidisciplinary. There will be single umbrella, which will coordinate the four various umbrella organizations, which will coordinate the four verticals on accreditation, regulation, for grants and funding, and as well as General Education Council, which will set standards. So all of this is great. And I heard Dr. Agarwal saying sometime back in one of the similar meetings that accreditation will be the new, regulations. So things will be around accreditation, the meta kind of a body, and what you call the National Accreditation Council, which will, set the base norms, will, rely more on public self-disclosure, and the focus will be on outcome and governance. So I'm not going to repeat all of that. Because in this new education policy, and for quite some time now, we have been talking about access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability. So I'm going to focus more on quality, accountability, affordability, and some of these aspects, because to me, the challenge is going to be at the level of implementation. And I'm not going to be taking too much time, because I know Dr. Agarwal is very constrained for time this afternoon. So my first concern is capacity building. While institutions like Jaipuria and other private institutions will have a lot of opportunity to experiment, explore, and do new things, my concern right now is capacity building at the national level, and especially at the level of faculty. I think we'll have to prepare faculty for this new vision. Faculty which will think differently, which will teach differently, and which will also, and capacity in terms of creating the right academic support infrastructure. So right now, as Srivas ji said, and I heard, that right now, the focus is on imparting knowledge, and what we call the application, but the new policy talks about application of knowledge and higher order thinking, and exploration, experimentation, lateral thinking, what you call critical thinking, analytical thinking, all of that. So the focus now is from knowledge to application, and also from application to also shaping the person, who's undergoing this process. What in one of the books that came out in about reorganizing MBA by Shrikant was about it's not about knowing, it's about also doing and being. So I think that is one area that we'll have to worry about it. But the question is, when we do that, and it talks about very clear, the GEC, the General Education Council, is going to talk about, is going to focus on setting the outcome goals, or the goals, or the learning goals, or the learning outcomes. And I think that's where we need to prepare our faculty, we need to train, because let me, my personal feeling is that any multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary education is going to be resource, guzzler, in the sense that you will require more faculty and other resources, because that's where the quality of faculty and also the number of faculty. So I think the new system is going to put additional, let's say, responsibility in terms of committing resources, especially in the private sector, because you will need more faculty, you will have to train your faculty in outcome-based education, to Bloom's taxonomy, to all of that. So, to prepare them to think beyond their discipline and think in a multidisciplinary way. And no multidisciplinary education can be offered and achieved with a faculty ratio of 1:20 or 1:15. So I think good institutions globally operate around 1:10 or 1:12 kind of a ratio. So it will require more faculty which will think differently, faculty which will have to be trained, and we'll have to create new training institutions. The policy talks about a new teachers training kind of a framework, but I think we need a little more effort and different kind of, what you call the PhD programs and training initiatives for faculty. The second point is the financial viability, because right now, all the funding that the new General Council for Funding or Grants that is going to be there, I think it doesn't talk about that they will also support this capacity building for the private sector as well, because I have been a firm believer, and if you look at the experience, some of the best institutions or the good institutions globally, no one has really achieved that excellence just on tuition, because tuition cannot support the kind of idea that this policy talks about. Tuition cannot support the research, the new kind of research and the fundamental research that you're talking about, and the kind of faculty expansion and all that. So are we looking at some kind of a, financial support, especially for the private institution? And I think when it comes to implementation, we should certainly flag this. And I have been a big votary that grants cannot be purely based on somebody's private or somebody's public. I think they should be based on a criteria which is well-defined globally, and all good institutions doing a good work should also get public funding. The other issue is the governance. How do we promote excellence, and for that create the governance structure, at the national level? And it's not a problem only in the private sector I'm talking about. I'm talking about also the governance in the public sector, because the governance is right now quite detached. It has very little accountability kind of, not very well-defined accountability framework. And there is no periodic assessment in terms of the contribution and the impact the institutions are making. So it's both in the private and public sector. How do we really address, though the policy talks about governance, but I think we need a little more, understanding there. And finally, the student engagement assessment, it talks about not a summative assessment, it talks about a formative and continuous assessment. But then again, for that, we'll have to train our faculty, because learning will have to be assessed continuously at different levels. And certainly it cannot be done in big classes of 100 or 150. Faculty will have to be provided resources to do this work both inside and outside the classroom. So I think the challenges are quite massive. As I said, the whole document is very aspirational. I don't think you can find fault in terms of what all has been covered. I think it has covered virtually every area. And as I said, Srivasji very beautifully put it around. But my concern right now is when we implement it, how are we going to address these 4 issues? And policy has to come out. Though NRF, they have committed 50,000 crores for the next 5 years to support fundamental and research and, at the national level. But I think we need more clarity and more commitment. And sooner we achieve this objective of 6% commitment of our GDP to education and make it, and spend it in a way that, it supports the kind of idea that this policy talks about. It supports good institutions, especially in the private sector. I think some of these, and also how to get states to commit those kind of resources, I think are going to be the challenges. And every forum I've been bringing it, and I'm writing something on this right now. But the point is, it's a great start, but I think we need to take it forward and really do what it takes to achieve the objectives and the ambition and the aspirations of this policy. So great. Thank you so much for asking me to speak on this. And Dr. Agarwal, I'm personally thankful and grateful to you for coming and joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Your words of wisdom has set the right tone for deliberation to unfold, highlighting importance of faculty, funding, governance, and of course, most important, student engagement. Now I request our director, Dr. D.N. Pandey, to please welcome our chief guest for the day, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, with the green certificate.
Afternoon, sir. Welcome, sir. We welcome our guest and honor the guest with a virtual green certificate.
Thank you.
The font is trees planted in your name in West Siang, Arunachal Pradesh, India.
I also have a tea there, so let's both go together once there,
Yeah, you have a number of certificates.
Let's visit that place.
So thank you, sir, for coming. And the dais is yours, sir, for chief guest address, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you, sir. Let me share a little bit about Dr. K.K. Agarwal, though you do not need any brief profile as such. Dr. K.K. Agarwal is presently chairman NBA, and with his vision for higher education, he is transforming the landscape with quality education outcomes. After a distinguished service of 27 years at NIT Kurukshetra, Professor Agarwal served as a pro-vice chancellor with GJU University, SR. He was also the founder, vice chancellor of GGS Indraprastha University, Delhi. He was conferred with honorary fellowship from Broadcast Society of India. To add, Dr. Agarwal is also decorated with Lifetime Achievement Award by Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineers and also by Computer Science of India. I request you, sir, to please share your insights on national education policy and deliver chief guest address.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Swati, for nice words about me. I'm also grateful to Professor Devi Singh for having me have this opportunity to be with all of you. I would have loved to be there all through 2 hours and listen to the great stalwarts in the panel discussion following, but we chose a bad day and I had to be pulled out for hardly 45 minutes out of another meeting. So therefore, my apologies that I will have to leave immediately after this inaugural address. And I also am very happy to find Shri Shrivats Jaipuria and the director Dayanand Pandey, and the eminent panelists, Dr. Sunil Rai, I'm able to see here. Dr. Prabhu Agarwal, I saw, but then Dr. D.P. Goyal probably yet to join, and Dr. Devashish Sanyal is here. Pleasure meeting all of you, friends. I think I'm visiting this institution after about 2 decades. When I visited I don't remember the year, but it was 20 plus minus 1, 2, when I came for a convocation to your institution. And after that, I'm here today. And thanks to Corona that I could make it today because it's virtual. Otherwise, day was not free today. But having said that, friends, I'm really looking forward to this opportunity for several reasons. I have addressed, I think, umpteen number of webinars on NEP, but most of them have been on the universities or in engineering dominated institutions. But probably in a standalone management institution, I'm talking about NEP today. And the greater challenge here, because management institutions are relatively very small institutions, and when we have to grow to multidisciplinary level, challenges are very, very great. And the national education policy, for the first time in the history of this country, lays down the minimum number for an institution. Normally, Mr. Jaipuria will agree with me that when you start an institution, all the regulatory bodies will say no more than 60, no more than 90. Then you again rub your heels for 2-3 years. Then they say, okay, 60 can be made 120, and so on and so forth. Now, with that kind of mindset, when we have said in this policy, the universities should have a minimum size of 3,000. I think for the first time in the history of education in this country, we are using the word minimum size. Otherwise, we were always bothered about it should not exceed this level. And I find that's a great change, because unless you have the numbers, you cannot think of viability, you cannot think of quality also at times. I repeat it many times when I went to Harvard for some lectures, and I asked the director there, when you started your business school, how many students you admitted? And he said 2,000. I mean, you know, a professor from this country just cannot believe that somebody can allow you to 2,000 students to be admitted in one program in one institution in the first year. I said, how else a large number? And his answer was beautiful. He says, Professor Agarwal, if we admit 2,000, then only for a 2-year program, we will have 4,000 students. And once we have 4,000 students, then only we can afford to have 400 best world-class faculty. Absolutely. Because if the number is so small, whatsoever you may say, we can never have world-class faculty numbers. So when Dr. D.V. Singh was talking about teacher-student ratio, that ratio also decides about the size of the institution. So one thing, we are all keeping our finger crossed that everything in this policy, or at least most of it, this policy is going on the implementation way in the right spirit. But I find this is a good mindset change. Second change, which again, Dr. D.V. Singh and prior to that, Srivat Jaipuria also highlighted, this was getting away with the affiliation system. Affiliation system is a legacy of Oxford University, and Britishers donated it, gifted it to us. And Oxford University finished affiliation 50 years before we became independent. So look at our conservatism. So we tolerated those 50 years, then another 75 years. And now we are thinking, just now we are thinking of getting rid of affiliation system. Affiliation system has its serious drawbacks. And while many of you in management institutions did not go to MBA, remained PGDBM for several reasons, good or bad. There are bad reasons for remaining PGDM institutions. There are good reasons also for remaining PGDM institutions, because you could have the flexibility of a design which the university would not permit you to do that. And management education, I mean, stalwarts like Dr. D.V. Singh and all that will bear me out, except for some very small number of institutions in the country, I don't think we really covered management education, the spirit in which it was intended to be covered too. And if I have to talk about NPE, I would just like you to scale up. Just take yourself 30, 40 years back when we introduced MBA in this country. or PGDBM in this country. Why did we do that? Because we believe commerce specialized people are not able to solve the problems. Economic specialized people are not able to solve the problems. Psychology specialized people are not able to solve the problem. We need an interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary class which has a reasonable knowledge of economics, may not be perfect, reasonable knowledge of commerce, reasonable knowledge of psychology, reasonable knowledge of IT, but the more important attribute of creativity and problem solving. Unfortunately, many of our institutions implemented half of it. They took half of commerce, half of economics, half of psychology, half of IT, but forgot about problem solving, accepting for very few. And that is where I'm only afraid, let national policy of education not lead us the same way, because we are now talking of multidisciplinarity on a much bigger scale. Now we are thinking we will give you +2 graduates without calling them humanities or commerce or science or medical or non-medical. And engineering colleges are supposed to admit students without knowing that they are science students. It's possible. Now, with that kind of scenario, there could be two possibilities. We could serve one of the best education in this country. We could make a mess of it. And I'll again repeat the analogy between MBA and PGDBM. If you today count how many institutions providing management education are really doing justice to the management education the way it was intended to, and how many are not, it is not a very happy scenario. And therefore, when we introduce more and more flexibility, we also expect more and more responsibility, more and more maturity, more and more financial viability. No model can survive where you daily fix the fees of the students, daily fix the salary of the staff, daily fix the number of the staff, and then you say quality. You know, it's as an engineer, I have always been saying, till you leave at least some degrees of freedom free, nothing can work. You say, I want a teak wood table, 4 into 2.5 feet, teak wood table of this quality, but cost should not be less than more than 1,000 rupees. Now, if you give that kind of design, it can never work. So we will have to make sure that somewhere we give a degree of freedom, which allows the institutions to build in the quality. Concepts in this policy are excellent. Multidisciplinarity is the need of the hour. And we were really very sorry on the state of affairs of super specialization at times. Probably one of our job of people like me and Dr. Devi Singh is to interview people every day. And if you ask them a question beyond the binding of the PhD thesis, they're zero. They can only talk about, hopefully, they can only talk about whatever is written in 200 pages between the binding of the PhD thesis. But beyond that, they say, ye to maine nahi padha. Ye to maine nahi kiya. If that be so, can the problems be solved? He can only teach his PhD thesis in half a lecture properly. But that is what we have done. And I remember, and it's not a new story. It's going on for ages together. I remember an editorial in an US journal that somebody wrote a PhD thesis in botany, and the girl had done research on the leaf of a tree. So the tree, the leaf, the sizes of the leaves, the number of veins in the leaf, the color texture, the thickness, pie charts, histogram, this, that, full beautiful 250 pages thesis with 5 papers published in good journals. When the viva was held, she could defend it. And the examiner said, well, thank you very much. You have done a good job. You are awarded the doctorate degree. But I'll just like to ask you a question out of my curiosity. And he said, which tree this leaf belongs to? And the girl did not know. Now, if that becomes our super specialization, then that super specialization can never solve our problems. Unless we get rooted to the ground realities of life. Super specialization is very good, but with the base intact. We are trying to make the fourth story without the foundation. And that's what we're doing to specialization. I always say, let's have human beings first, and then maybe engineers, then maybe mechanical engineers, then maybe air conditioner engineers. We say, isko air conditioning aa gayi, to ye super specialized engineer ho gaya. Now, whether he is an engineer or not, we don't even ask. Whether he is a good human being or not, we don't even ask. If that be so, we do make serious mistakes. We have done it for umpteen number of years in super specialization. And I hope this policy will take care of it. And that is why today we talk about people will have to be trained in meta skills. That is learning how to learn. Because subjects will keep on changing. You can't, howsoever dynamic you may be, no university on earth in the world can teach all what a student needs in the life. It's impossible. Industrial Revolution 4.0 has a published article that 65% of the graduates today will be doing a job whose title none of us knows. Forget about the detail. Neither the students, nor the teachers, nor the universities, nor the institutions know what will be their job titles. And we are coming up very funny titles. Chief Technology Officers, Chief Entertainment Officers, Chief Finance Officer, Chief Ethical Manager, so on and so. And now I read like Uber, they are coming with a producing people who could spend time with old people and allow them to pass their time. So like an Uber, you can order a boy or a girl, come and spend 1 hour with me in the evening, and I'll pay you that much. And that will become another profession. So what I'm trying to say is only imagination is going to be the limit of the new professions. People are now hiring people how to build up the trust of the companies in the market. Because statistics prove us that even in a country like USA, youngsters are prepared to work at 15% less salary if their organization is ethical. And that's in USA. In India, probably this may be 25%, 30% kind of thing. So the youngsters whom we blame that they are not ethical and all that, it is their study. So I don't think we can blame the youngsters, and I, for one, always believe wherever youngsters have gone wrong, we have made faults, we have made mistakes. Otherwise, it could have just not happened. And I think day before yesterday, I was addressing a webinar like this, and I said, because parents stopped doing their job, teachers stopped doing their job, therefore you need counselors in every universities and every college. Otherwise, where were the counselors required if teachers and parents were doing the job? So friends, what I'm trying to say is this policy is great, no doubt about it. Dr. Devi Singh did talk about accreditation. Yes, it says in so many words, accreditation will be the new norm of regulation. The reason is simple, because when you start institutions on a green field, AICTE or UGC obviously gives you approval without having to study too many things. It's not possible. You only say, I have a land, I made first year buildings, come and give me approval. And we have no option. It's only accreditation which assesses you 2 years after graduation. So therefore studies are certainly more realistic than the greenfield study, and therefore new norm of regulation will be accreditation. And imagine 1,000+ universities and 40,000+ colleges to be accredited. And at the moment, we have less than 20%, despite all our efforts. But people sometimes believe NBA and NAC are not able to accredit us. Well, let me tell you, neither NBA has a backlog of applications, nor NAC has any backlog of applications. People are not applying to us for accreditation because they know jolly well that they are not fit for accreditation. They are very sure they don't meet the quality standards. And therefore, country has a right to ask a counter question. If you yourself know you don't meet the quality standards, why do you ask 5 lakhs fee from me? You are yourself confident that you don't meet the quality standards. And then you want fee, then you want years of young life of my boy or girl, and so on and so forth. So these questions will become very valid questions, and therefore it will come. And finally, friends, in management, again, I will, because I'm talking to a management institution, please take your students out of the classroom as much as you can. Putting the students in the classroom, particularly in management education, if my management professors bear me, I think it's a good crime which we have been doing for so many years. Teach them out. Let them meet 20 entrepreneurs, interview them, publish their case studies as a document. It will give them well. I told if the finance students learn to read the balance sheet of a company, they will become good finance managers than 7 subjects of financial management. So we'll have to bring them outside the classroom and take them to the field. And therefore, this policy definitely says communication skills, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, these will be the new names of the game which will have to come in. And finally, friends, because I think I've already taken the time which is allotted to me and my constraints, of course. But finally, I thought I was just reading yesterday about Jeff Bezos, who is the owner of Amazon. And he says, if you decide that you cannot fail, then don't start a business. And I remember when I was Vice Chancellor, I addressed a conference of CAs, I think, in Vigyan Bhavan. And I told most of your parents here, please raise hand if any mother or father decided that their child should learn to walk and at the same time decided that the child should never fall. I'm sure no child would have learned to walk if parents would have made dead sure that the child never falls. So, but that we are prepared to do that in the education. We are prepared to do that. We don't do new combination of subjects. Maybe it's not popular. Hell with it. If it's not popular, it will become popular tomorrow. And if it will not become popular tomorrow, we'll change it. So the experiments will have to be done. And finally, friends, I'll just read one paragraph and close. That's a beautiful piece. It says law of wasted effort. It says, do you know, lions only succeed in a quarter of their hunting attempts, which means they fail in 75% of their attempts and succeed in only 25% of them. Despite this small percentage shared by most predators, they don't despair in their pursuit and hunting attempts. The main reason for this is not because of hunger, as some might think, but it is the understanding of the law of wasted efforts that have been instinctively built into animals, a law by which nature is governed. Half of the eggs of the fish are eaten. Half of the baby bears die before puberty. Most of the world's rain falls in oceans and goes waste. Most of the seeds of the tree are eaten by birds. Scientists have found that animals, trees, and other forces of nature are more receptive to the law of wasted efforts. Only humans think that the lack of success in a few attempts is a failure. But the truth is that we only fail when we stop trying. Success is not to have a life free of pitfalls and falls, but success is to walk over your mistakes and go beyond every stage where your efforts were wasted, looking forward to the next stage. I thought I'll read it particularly to a management school, because your graduates will be trying different products every day. I mean, today they sell matchboxes and after 2 years they sell Mercedes. I mean, if that be kind of scenario, they must learn to fail at times, because it's not possible that they will succeed all the time. So I believe national policy of education is implemented by everybody. And finally, I believe every institution is ready to, you probably do not need any more rules to start implementing NPE to a good extent. 60–70% of NPE can be implemented without any government directions. And sooner we start doing it, gradually we prepare ourselves better and better. Better will it be for us, for the country. And with these few words, I thank the institution and Dr. D.V. Singh and Dr. Pandey, Director, and Shrivat's Vice Chairman for giving me this opportunity and allow me also to have a glimpse of my friends here as panelists, and hope that you have a beautiful discussion for the next 1.5 half hour. And I look forward to some great things being implemented. Wish you all the very best, and thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights on NP 2020. And thanks for joining us today afternoon. We understand your constraint of time, but the deliberation was wonderful. Thank you, sir.
wonderful. It was great, Dr. Agarwal. It was a
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. It was a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you. I'll see you later. I'm leaving now. Okay.
Thank you. All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you.